Hello everyone. In my last presentations, we dealt about special education or special school, integrated education and integrated school, which is the subtopic of types of school and belongs to course 203, that is school and inclusive school. Today I am going to teach the third subtopic, that is inclusive school. So let's see the introduction about inclusive school. Inclusive education has grown from the belief that education is a basic human right and that it provides the foundation for a more just society. All learners have a right to education regardless of their individual characteristics or difficulties. Inclusive education initiatives often have a particular focus on those groups which in the past have been excluded from educational opportunities. These groups include students living in poverty, those from ethnic and linguistic minorities, girl students from remote areas, and those with disabilities or other special educational needs. The latter are often the most marginalized, both within education and in the society in general. Traditionally disabled students or those with other special educational needs have experienced exclusion, discrimination and segregation from mainstream education and their peers. Some are placed in separate classes or schools, may have been denied access to education of any sort. Segregated educational provisions separate students from their peers and families and may not be cost effective. Establish or extending separate provision do not identify and remove barriers which prevent these students from learning in mainstream school. Inclusive education is all about helping mainstream schools to overcome the barrier so that they can meet the learning needs of all students. Inclusive education is not only concerned with the disabled student or finding an alternative for segregated special schooling. It also includes gifted student and disadvantaged student. Inclusive education serves as a medium which brings out the hidden capacities of individual while maintaining the harmony with the aims and the objectives of the society. Inclusive education is sensitive to the needs of the every individual and is designed towards the attainment of equity, equality, quality and social justice. Inclusive education encourages policymakers and managers to look at the barrier within the education system, how they arise and how they can be removed. Inclusive education is a process of removing barriers and enabling all students to learn and participate effectively within general school, normal school or college system. Inclusive education no longer distinguishes between general education and special education programs. Instead, the school and colleges is restructured so that all students learn. Inclusive education in India is rather a novel, recent concept which means for school of creating effective classroom functioning where the educational needs of all children including those with disabilities are addressed. Two things seems to be barricade the success of such policies. Population explosion, which has resulted in the unimagined increase in the number of students in 200 millions in the age group between 6 to 14 years, with the vast population explosion which has resulted in the unimagined increase in the number of students, say 200 millions in the age group between 6 to 14 years, with vast diversity of personality characteristics, intellectual ability, interest, aptitude, attitudes, educational aspirations and goals, along with the variance in physical characteristics, disabilities and handicap. Education for All and Right to Education, that is RTE Act and its modification, Education for All with all others in general stream system, first for the range of from 6 to 14 years and extending it to further the age of 18 years etc. But the goal of inclusive education is exciting, interesting, quite difficult but not impossible. So recognizing a vast variety of differences in physical, mental, emotional, socio-cultural aspects and accommodating the curricula, teaching strategies and evaluation system to the needs of all, whether disabled or non-disabled in another name for inclusive education. We can say that the inclusive education, while recognizing children's vast diversities, accepting them gives every child the equal chance of his or her cognitive, emotional, creative development to the So this is all about the introduction of inclusive school. Let us see the meaning of inclusive. The term inclusive education or inclusive school refers to the education for all children without discrimination of attainment, gender or disability into the regular school. It is about minimizing exclusion and fostering participation for all children in the culture within a wider framework of support of all children. In ordinary school, it is our unending set of process in which children and adults with disability have equal opportunity to participate in activities. It is based on the principle of equalization of educational opportunities. So this is the meaning of inclusive education or inclusive school. Let us see the concept of inclusive school or inclusive education. It includes all the students who are away from education for any reason, like physically or mentally challenged, economically, socially deprived, or belonging to any caste, creed or gender. Inclusive education in special education is a recent concept and also an accepted approach in general education in the Indian context. A teacher in the regular school focuses on the average learner but is also experienced in handling academically talented as well as the general classroom teacher teaches children who differ in their level of intelligence. Thus, inclusion with reference to this category is already taken place. Therefore, in the present day context, there arises a need to include the sensory impaired or visually impaired and the hearing impaired into the general stream of education. The major similarity between non-disabled and the disabled children is their cognitive abilities. This proved to be very supportive factor for these children to study along with their normal peers in the inclusive setup with the learning of the plus curriculum, enabling them to cope with their disability. The idea of integration categorizes a child on the basis of some identifiable differences and separate him or her from the normal group. In educational term, the deficit of the child needs compensation by special educational inputs in a special educational setup. If the child has to be mainstreamed, he or she has to be given special attention to cope in the regular class. A key notion associated with integration is the adaptation of the impaired child to school. Inclusion offers a different perspective on the education of child with disability in ordinary school. Inclusion means all children are welcomes regardless of differences. In this system, the emphasis is not on treating the deficit but on adapting the environment to accommodate the disability, perceiving it as a normal differences. Within the inclusion model, there is a less emphasis on trying to make the child as much like a seeing child as possible. The differences are not only to be accepted and respected but also to rejoice the fact that no two human beings are same or equal. An inclusive school is a place where everyone belongs to, child is accepted and is supported by his or her peers and other members of the school or community in the course of training for his or her educational need. Inclusive education is a flexible and individualized support system and is provided in regular school, committed to an appropriate education for all. Inclusive education schools recognizes or respond to the diversity of the children's need and abilities, included differences in their ways and pace of learning. So this is all about the concept of school. Let's see the definition of inclusive school. Inclusive education can be defined as the process increasing participation of students in the cultures, curricula and communities of local mainstream schools. So inclusion means providing all students within the mainstream appropriate educational programs that are challenging, geared to their capabilities and needs, as well as any support and assistance they and their teachers may need to be successful in the mainstream. But an inclusive school also go beyond this. An inclusive school is a place where everyone belongs, is accepted, support and is supported by his or her peers and other members of the school and community in the course of having his or her educational needs meets. So this is all about the definition of inclusive school. Let us see the objectives of inclusive school. All students welcomed by their neighborhood schools, equal opportunity for all participation, subject conferred curriculum and methodology, most cost effective, teacher effectiveness in including all learning process, formal planning is required, all the students away from education are included in the mainstream school, special infrastructure, trained staff and special curriculum is designed for them or for disabled students. So these are the objectives of inclusive school. Let us see the role of teacher. Interaction with family, to be able to solve their problems, to develop new learning strategies, to be able to develop self-confidence, to be able to provide special facilities to the disabled people, to be able to look after their personal needs when the disabled persons need or disabled students need, to be able to recognize their hidden talent, provide the opportunities for show their hidden talents, to inculcate positive attitudes in children. So these are the role and responsibilities of inclusive teacher. Mainstream school. Let's start the last topic of our subtopic, types of school, which is mainstream school. Let's see the introduction about mainstream. In its historical derivations, in situations where the disabled student attend the regular schools and instructed in separate special classes, the term mainstreaming was to describe their placement in general education classes. In this way, it was meant to refer the selective placement or exceptional or disabled student in one or more regular education classes. This placement option had to be earned by the disabled child studying in a special separate class by demonstrating his or her ability to keep up with the work assigned by the regular classroom teacher. Whatever historical necessity might have been arisen for the coining of the term integration and mainstreaming, it was admitted fact that both of them were inspired and propagated as a reaction to the philosophy of institutionalization, segregation and separation, since both of them aimed to provide opportunities for the exceptional children to get their education along with their non-exceptional peers in the same school or even classes. They were begun to be used interchangeably. Nowadays, when we talk about integration or mainstreaming, we usually take them one and one the same thing, that is seeking education of the disabled or exceptional children along with the non-disabled peer in the same school setting. The general education classes, by allowing the disabled children to drift along with the non-disabled student in the same stream of educational setup, adjustment and learning opportunities. As a clear-cut evidence of such growing tendency, we are hereby producing the definition of the terms. So this is all about the introduction of mainstreaming. Let us see the meaning of mainstreaming. Mainstreaming is a term that is often interchangeably used with integration. Mainstreaming is an educational process which facilitates meaningful interaction of children with and without learning impairment or disability in classroom instruction and social activities. Mainstreaming does not mean placement of all exceptional students in regular classes. The key of mainstreaming is to placement of mildly retarded in regular school or classrooms environment that best fits their needs. It can be a regular classroom for the part of the day, or sometime it may not be include a regular classroom but a special class in the regular sitting, and extracurricular activity is determined by the consideration of how best we may promote learning, achievement and social normalization. So it is all about the mainstreaming and meaning of mainstream schools. Let us see the objectives of mainstream school. Mainstreaming does not involve putting a child full time in a special school. It is a support system for the child or to show the hidden talents of the child. Mainstreaming does not involve placing a child full time in a regular classroom. A student who spent an entire day in a regular classroom with non-disabled peer is considered fully included. Most students with a mild levels of disability such as dyslexia or attention deficit disorder or with non-cognitive disabilities such as diabetes are fully included in mainstreaming. Mainstreaming does not involve teaching the child outside of the school. So these are the objectives of mainstream schools. What is the mainstream school? The placement of a learner with special needs in a regular educational programs and given special instruction in specific learning areas. Mainstreaming is an educational method that combines handicapped or disabled students into regular classroom instead of separating students according to learning disabilities. Its purpose is to give every student a typical classroom experience, but as with everything else in life, it has pros and cons. So, mainstream school integration is another expression used to mainstream. Integration cannot be reduced simply to an educational issues or an employment issues. Its achievements will require to successful coordination of whole series, an approach to mainstream in education that takes the individual needs of the disabled person. At the level of education, the integration of a disabled child into a regular classroom situation means a concurrent education with a class of non-disabled children. In such a setup, there are greater opportunities for handicapped child to mix with his or her non-disabled counterparts in games, sports and other activities. The aim of integrated education is to assimilate the disabled child into a group of non-disabled people and providing opportunity to make him or her independent as possible. So this is all about the mainstream schools. Let's see the concept of mainstreaming. Mainstreaming has generally been used to refer to the selective placement of special education student in one or more regular education classes. Mainstreaming generally assumes that a student must earn his or her opportunity to be mainstreamed through the ability to keep up with the work assigned by the teacher to other students in the class. Mainstreaming is a belief which involves an educational placement, procedure and process for exceptional children based on the conviction that each such child be educated in the least restrictive environment in which his educational and related needs can be satisfactorily provided. Exceptional children have a wide range of special education needs varying greatly in intensity and duration. Special classes or separate schooling should be occur only when the intensity of the child's special educational and related needs are such that they cannot be satisfied in an environment which included normal children, even with the provision of supplementary aids and services. Thus, mainstreaming is as temporal, instructional and social integration of eligible exceptional children with normal peers based on an ongoing individually determined educational planning and programming process. So this is the concept of mainstreaming. Let us see the role of teacher in mainstreaming. The role of teacher in the mainstreaming process is essential to the success of the program. Mainstreaming requires two teachers to work together, one from the regular classroom and one from the special education department. So these are the role of teachers in mainstreaming school. But one of the major problem of mainstreaming movement is the assumption of its proponents. It can and will be readily embraced by regular classroom teachers. Consequently, some mainstream class have been quickly established with the little planning and thoughts given to prepare general educator for their new and different role. Hence, there is a need of guide the general and special educator properly to make such mainstream or integrated classes a success. So let's conclude the topic of mainstreaming. Mainstreaming is a step ahead for the inclusive society which focuses on the disabled people's success. The mainstreaming should cater to specific needs of the disabled person. An approach to mainstream in education that takes place the individual needs of the different types of impaired people or disabled people into full consideration, which may be physical mainstreaming, social mainstreaming, or academic mainstreaming, or societal mainstreaming. So this is all about the mainstream schools. Today we finished our topic types of school, in which we learned about special school, integrated school, inclusive school, and mainstream school. So thank you one and all. If you have any query, you can call me or contact me. Thank you once again.